Tennessee.
Oh, Tennessee Wonders St. Cloud,
Yeah,
right. Oh,
Tennessee
that's
Wonders.
awesome. Across.
Got-
That's really cool.
Got both.
Have you done this yet?
No. Should we test this out? Check when we get up. Okay.
I'll stand over here.
Sound check. Testing 1, 2. How is this coming through? Seems loud and clear. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Sound check. Good morning, friends. How am I sounding?
Hi, Mary.
Thank you.
Someone said echoey.
Good morning, I'm David Pillmore. Okay.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Ooh, it is a little echoey.
It does seem a little echoey. Yeah. Good morning, part 2. Okay. Leah wants a picture. She's gonna watch online too, but she asked us if you don't have pictures, if we can take some pictures for her. So,
Man, there's no more water.
after that one, huh? So, that sounds good. And then we actually admire it as well. Yeah. And then they can see, because the part before that explains it, so then they'll see it while it's on you. Does that make sense? Because we say that part about what, all about what it was, then we put it on, and then she does the main part. Is that okay?
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. My name is Janet Evans, and I'm pleased to be your worship leader for today's service. We welcome all at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. All of you are welcome, and all of you are sacred. Whatever your past was like, whatever this present moment is like for you, we invite you to journey into the future together. And welcome to everyone joining us online. We are a multi-platform church, and we're delighted you're here. This congregation is all of us together in person and online. If you're a new online visitor, you'll find a link to our visitor form in the video description, or send an email to the office and let us know how you found us. It's my pleasure today to welcome our guest speaker, Reverend Christopher Watkins Lamb. Christopher, he, him, or they, them, is an eco-chaplain, a song leader, and a spiritual care practitioner in Fort Collins, Colorado. They currently serve in two roles. Christopher is lead chaplain at Poudre Valley Hospital, providing multi-faith and belief interdisciplinary spiritual care to staff, patients, and families. Their ministry is focused on the intersection of ancestral healing and trauma work, critical ecology, creative beauty making, and imaginal perception. A lifelong UU from Knoxville, Tennessee, Christopher was raised at Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church on youth conferences and UU camp culture. This foundation has fed their passion for nature-based ministry, group work, and crafting embodied worship. Christopher earned a Master's of Divinity from the Isla School of Theology and holds a BA in French and Global Studies from Middle Tennessee State University. As the first spiritual care resident at Colorado State University, Christopher established new models of multi-religious care at public universities. They serve as MFN liaison for the Mountain Desert District. Christopher is a husband and father to two girls, and he enjoys spending time outdoors, doing yoga and cooking with fresh vegetables, and playing in his band, Crispy Watkins and the Crack Willows.
Thank you for those words of welcome. I call us to worship this morning with these words from Reverend Gretchen Haley. Lean on and lean in, that we might hear one another into being. Create here a circle of promise and trust, a safe place where we can be uncomfortable together, a place of grace and forgiveness, bold bravery and new beginnings, where we might still name the needful things of our hearts, the missing places of our lives, the dreams yet unfulfilled, some barely yet clear enough for words. Come, let us be vulnerable here, human and true and messy, or try to be, or just a little. Let the real peek out from its usual hiding places, that we might meet each other. See each other, see life for what it is, still possible, still becoming, still trying to be whole again with our help. Come, let us worship together.
Please rise in body and spirit and join us in singing Let the Way of the Heart. Okay, here we go. Let the way of the heart shine through. Let the way of the heart,
Let the way of the heart, let the way of the heart
shine through.
love upon love upon love, all hearts beating as one, light upon light
upon love, love upon love upon love, all hearts beating as one, light upon light, light upon light upon light, all disappear into one, disappear into one. Let the way of the heart, let the way of the heart, let the way of the heart shine through. Let the way of the heart, let the way of the heart, let the way of the heart shine through.
Long ago and far away, or yesterday and just around the corner. You may have missed the first part of that sentence. Long ago and far away, or yesterday and just around the corner, or maybe somewhere halfway in between, there was a town that sat, quiet and content, tucked in the shadow of a mountain. And carved on the side of that mountain, big and tall, so no one could miss them, were the words, "The answer is no." And no one knew where the words came from or why they were there. They'd just always been there. But oh my goodness, the people who lived in that town cuddled into that mountain and were glad to have those words there. Because whenever the townspeople had a question, all they had to do was look up to the mountain and read it. The answer was always no. Making decisions was very simple, and life went on smoothly and easily in the town, just coddled into the mountain, until one day. Now, on that particular day, Ma Custis was about to make dinner for her family, and she just couldn't decide, because sometimes you can't, whether to make stew or steak, pasta or potatoes, dumplings or donuts. So she went out into the yard. "Should I make liver for dinner tonight?" she asked, and looked up at the mountain. And the mountain said, "The answer is no." All right, I knew that, really. Nobody's crazy about liver. But should I maybe make steak for dinner? And the mountain said, "The answer is no." Should I make chicken? The mountain said, "The answer is no." Should I make tacos or tofu, baked beans or broccoli, pork chops or popcorn? The mountain said nothing, but the answer is no. Ma Custis asked more questions until the sun disappeared behind the mountain. She kept on asking questions until the sun came up around the other way. And all the mountain ever said was, "The answer is no." Because Ma couldn't get an answer that was any kind of answer, she and her family went all night and all the next day and all the next night without dinner. Finally, Ma just gave up and made liver anyway. Even though the mountain said no, and even though everyone hated liver, because liver was the first thing she thought of. But Ma Custis had had enough. She glared at the mountain, stamped her foot, and shook her fist. "Why is the answer always no? Why can't you just say yes for once?" Ma turned around and stomped away to ring the town bell and call a town meeting. Well, when that bell rang, the whole town came running. From the oldest man with the longest beard to the youngest kids who still needed carrying, no one would miss a town meeting. They all came and they all listened carefully as Ma Custis told her story. "Seems to me," she said, "that we've got a problem. That mountain just isn't helping us like it should. Seems to me it would be nice if it said yes for a while." The townsfolk knew Ma Custis had a point, but they didn't much like this idea, changing something that had been the same for so long. But after they thought, and then they thought some more, they finally nodded solemnly. The mountain would have to be recarved. Mason Sharp, the stone carver, nodded along with the rest of them. He scratched his nose and adjusted his cap and slowly gazed the length of the mountain. Then he cleared his throat and said in his gravelly voice, "Looks to me like I could do the carving if that's all right with all of you." And so it was. Mason spent the next 2 weeks up on the side of the mountain, chiseling and chipping and carving away and coming down only when it got too dark to see. And when he was done, the mountain said, "The answer is yes." Mason rang the bell to call the town together, and once again they all came running. From the oldest women with the white hair to the youngest kids who still needed carrying, they all wanted to see the new sign, and they all wanted to cheer for the stone carver and all his hard work. Ma Custis, who had started all this, came right up to the front of the crowd. She figured she ought to be the person to ask the first question of this new and different mountain. Since she discovered the problem with the old one, she stepped right up to the foot of the mountain, looked way up to the top, and asked, "Should I make liver for dinner tonight?" And the mountain said the answer is yes. Well, now, Ma Custis almost fell over with surprise. "But Pa Custis told me he'd never forgive me if I served liver again, and all my kids threatened to hide in the barn for a week. Should I really serve liver?" And the mountain said, "The answer is yes." The townspeople began to grumble. They didn't like the sound of this. Ma Custis's family grumbled the loudest. "But, well, I can't," Ma said. I just can't serve liver again. I promised I wouldn't." "Are you telling me I should break my promise?" The mountain said, "The answer is yes." The grumbling got louder, and Ma Custis, well, she glared at the mountain again and stamped her foot and shook her fist. And she turned to the townspeople and said, "This just isn't right. This just can't be right. What are we going to do?" Once again, the townsfolk put on their thinking caps. Everyone thought, Ma Custis, Pa Custis, and all the Custis kids, who probably thought the hardest of all because they were worried about the liver, very worried. And finally, the smallest one of the Custis kids piped up. "Why does there have to be just one answer? Can we have more?" The townspeople gasped. No one had ever thought of such a thing before. They mumbled and grumbled and talked among themselves. And finally they decided that the mountain ought to say, "The answer is sometimes yes, and sometimes no, and sometimes wait, and sometimes I just don't know." Well, Mason, the stone carver, who had been listening to all of this, cleared his throat, scratched his nose, adjusted his cap, and said, "I think I can do it. I don't mind. Not really, even if I did just finish carving in the new change. Well, it's going to take a lot of time, and I can't work all day long like I did the last time. How about I work on it when I can, and we'll just hang up some kind of sign on the mountain that lets people know the answer is coming." And so it was. The funny thing was that for a little while, Mason worked on the mountain every day, and for a little while, everyone in town waited eagerly to see the new answer. But soon the stonemason got tired of climbing up the mountain every day, and everyone else got tired of waiting. And they all started asking each other questions and helping everyone else find the answers that seemed to fit. The townspeople realized that different questions usually had different answers, and that sometimes the same question had more than one answer, and that there were many more answers than they had imagined. And all of that was fine with them. After a while, they thought that maybe the answer the mountain was giving them right then, just as it was better and more sensible than any other answer it had given. And so they left it as it was. And the mountain said, "The answer is under construction."
If you're joining us online and have a candle or a chalice nearby, please get ready to light it. We invite you to type into the chat box where your chalice is lit, the street or neighborhood or what city if you're joining us from outside Boulder County. And now I'd like to invite David Pillmore to light this morning's chalice.
Good morning. Masks and hearing aids are a problem. Anyway, it's a beautiful day. My name is David Pillmore. My wife introduced me to the Unitarian Universalist Church in the early 1990s. It appealed to me for many reasons. The idea of a covenant to help each other in our individual searches for truth was key, but its greatest blessings for me are, first, that it's a safe place to hold and discuss differing opinions. Here people listen to each other instead of yelling. This congregation provides a feeling of safety that's a profound blessing. Also, it's a place of mutual support and understanding in difficult and stressful times. My father failed gradually for the last 5 years of his life. The help we received during this time of change, both here and from the Foothills Unitarian Church of Fort Collins, where he's a member, helped tremendously in dealing with all the stress and pain of helping him through the process of dying, his as well as ours. A place like the UU Church, where support and aid can be found to help in dealing with the pressures and distress resulting from the increasingly rapid changes found in the world today, is a great gift. I light this chalice in honor of this center of safety and mutual support.
We now invite all those gathered in your various locations to join together in fellowship and community as we all say aloud together our congregation's covenant. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
I invite you into a time of meditation. Please make yourself comfortable and close your eyes, or simply allow your soft, unfocused gaze to rest a few feet in front of you. Bring your attention to your breath. You'll find if you just restrict your airway just a bit, your breath can be slow and gentle, but audible. You might start to hear just a little bit of your breathing. Notice that sound. You can notice your body seated wherever you are. Feeling the way you're supported by whatever surface you may be sitting on. Noticing breath and body. And as you take a deep breath, bring in more oxygen, enlivening the body. And as you exhale, just invite a sense of relaxation. You can notice your feet on the floor, the sensations of your feet, perhaps in whatever shoes you might be wearing. Notice weight and the pressure. You can notice your legs pressing against the chair, wherever they might be supported. Notice pressure, pulsing, heaviness, and lightness. And notice your back, wherever it may be supported. Invite your breath to just lightly touch your back. Moving your attention to your stomach, Notice if there's any tension or tightness there. Just breathe into that space. Notice your arms. Allow your awareness to travel down to your hands, fingertips. Now notice your neck and your throat, continuing to return to your breath. Invite any softness that you are able to do there into your jaw and face, all the way up to the crown of your head. Just bringing your body into your awareness now, wholly from the bottoms of your feet to the crown of your head. Take a breath with this awareness. There are an estimated 30 to 40 trillion cells in the human body. All of those living organisms working together to be you. I invite you to feel all those cells just humming and buzzing with life. In order for you to be you, they must all communicate with one another. They must all perform their individual tasks so that a larger life can be. In some Hindu understandings, the sound of all these little organisms working together, the sound of all the universe all at once, is Om. In recognition of the living community that is you, let's chant this sound Om together 3 times. Om. Retaining this sense of your breath and your body, just invite you to bring to mind any pain that you may be experiencing. And bring to mind those in your life who are experiencing pain. We offer love and light to those who are suffering. Please bring to mind the things for which you are grateful. Allow that gratitude to sit with you now. With joy, we celebrate with Lisa and David Hughes as they write, Sophie Hughes graduated magna cum laude from CSU on May 15th and is working at a preschool in Fort Collins. All our love and celebration with Sophie. We give thanks for all the blessings, the ways in which we are given and cared for each day in this interdependent web of life.
Back in September of 2020, our congregation co-ordained Reverend Christopher along with Foothills Unitarian Church and the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church of Knoxville, Tennessee. During the ceremony, Christopher received a stole from his home organization in Knoxville. A second stole was jointly commissioned by UUCB and Foothills. A local artist and member of Foothills, Ann Aspen, worked with Christopher to create this symbolic garment full of meaning and intention. The stole is the colorful fabric, a bit like a scarf, that ministers wear over their robes. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, only an ordained minister may wear one. When a congregation ordains a minister, it means they are entrusting that person symbolically with the power of the faith. It is fitting that this power is granted only by a congregation in our faith, because we believe that the wisdom is in the congregation, the compassion is in the congregation, the passion for justice is in the congregation. A minister may embody or represent these things in a single person, but the depth of wisdom, compassion, and justice seeking is in the congregation.
Here is the design statement that came out of a series of conversations between Anne and Reverend Christopher. Christopher's stole is a gift from UUCB and Foothills Unitarian in Fort Collins. It was custom made for him by Ann Aspen as an artistic representation of his call to ministry. Witnessing trauma and deep wounding was the seminal moment of Christopher's music ministry. Christopher is drawn to travel with those who have suffered violence, including the earth and its many wounded places, listening and providing a loving presence. His providing the rituals of singing and playing music together connects people in wider circles like connective tissue gathering to heal. The stole is embroidered with stitches which call to mind wound healing, mending, and the elements of musical rhythm. The yellow and red center shapes represent both wounds and seeds, which vibrate and reverberate to generate change, healing, growth, and resilience. The wavy lines of the stitching around them represent sound waves, musical strings in motion, and the radiating love that is the underpinning of grief, numbness, and eco-grief. Christopher sees himself as ferrying those in his care along their journeys. The colorful ripples which alternate sides on the stole are the wake of his oars as he navigates the waters. They also represent what he describes as making room for unexpected change and acknowledging and celebrating how one moment of surprise can change everything. May this stole from the two churches which nurtured you as you developed your ministry grace your shoulders and be a touchstone and reflection of your sacred work.
May you always minister from your whole self, bringing your heart and mind, body and spirit to the work.
May you always speak the truth with compassion and fire.
May you demonstrate humility, curiosity, and courage.
May you minister with love, justice, and compassion foremost.
May you listen and understand what vulnerable truth people may share and find beauty in the broken places.
May you know yourself to be one piece of the creation of a faith greater and more full of love than you can imagine.
May you be a witness to the living tradition of our faith, and may you be faithful in service of healing the world. May it be so today and every day. Amen.
abide with me. Please don't flee. I look inside when it's hard to see. This eventide, take a ride around the bend. Still with me abide when the shadows begin. So much has faded, left me jaded. God is change, it's complicated. From growth to decay, emergence be beyond thought and strategy.
Swift to its close, ebbs out life's little day. Earth's joys grow dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changes not, abide with me.
So many know I fear no foe. There is a steadiness on which I flow. Through the sickness, grandmother's wisdom is with us. In liminal spaces, feeling so breathless, death is an exhale, inhale with us. New life cuts through strife like a knife. Somehow we take it in, moving for the win. Shape and change, and from endings begin. You are a holy friend.
I fear no foe, with thee at hand to bless. Ills have no weight, and tears no bitterness. Where is death's sting? Where grave thy victory? I triumph still if thou abide with me.
All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. So reads the first verse of the Book of the Living, the religious text of earth seed as described in Octavia Butler's book, The Parable of the Sower. You can see depicted right there. In this post-apocalyptic novel published in 1993, the world as we know it has collapsed. The main character, Lauren Oya Olamina, a young black teen, grows up in an American suburb separated from the surrounding developments, where her community relies on walls and weapons as they eke out a living amidst abject suffering and poverty all around them. It's in these remnants of a gated community in Robledo, California, that the daughter of a Baptist preacher begins to secretly write what is destined to become the founding text of a new religious movement, Earthseed. The book begins in the year 2024. Indeed, as I was reading this novel in the midst of a global pandemic, a new level of reckoning with systemic racism in our country, an attempted coup on our capital, and so much more, the dystopian future depicted felt all too real. I would have been tempted at times to put the book down. I was, to find something to give me more comfort and a sense of stability. but it was an accompanying podcast released weekly starting in 2020 by one of my favorite thinkers and writers, Adrienne Marie Brown, that allowed me to digest Octavia Butler's prophetic warnings. And that image over on this side is the podcast image. In the midst of despair, I would turn to listen to the podcast and feel both comforted and enlightened. The podcast co-host, Adrienne Marie Brown, brought her rich perspective as the founder of the Emergent Strategy Ideation Institute and author of the book Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds, among other titles. Now, Brown has found inspiration in Octavia Butler's science fiction novels for a social change movement working to create a more just and ecologically sound future where all life can thrive. In reading through the novel, little by little, Octavia Butler reveals to us the verses of the Book of the Living, as Lauren Olamina calls the text that she is writing. It reads to me a little like a less cryptic version of the Tao Te Ching, only slightly less cryptic maybe. The first verse again reads, I'll read it for you, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. As a student of Adrienne Marie Brown's emergent strategy, I consider myself at times something of a theologian of emergence. This text, these verses of Earthseed, serve as a reference point for this work. Grounding theology in the works of visionary black women like Butler and Brown just demands so much humility and reverence. I'm so grateful for the intellectual labor they have contributed to this. This message of Earthseed and the philosophy of emergent strategy holds something I believe deeply crucial for the time and place we are in. As we witness in heartbreak and in rage this latest spree of shootings that feel all too close to home, as we wrestle as a nation with the sedition and existential threat to our democracy through the hearings taking place right now, we need some wisdom. We need some guidance. We need some words to navigate by. In the midst of violence and instability, young Lauren Olamina had very little control over her environment. Any illusion of safety that she had harbored as a child was gone by her teenage years, as her community experienced more and more break-ins and acts of violence and theft, and desperate people who had less, they just continued to breach the walls time and time again, and it became clear to Lauren that it was only a matter of time before the trickle became a flood, and life as she knew it was going to end. Verse 4, we do not worship God. We perceive and attend God. We learn from God. With forethought and work, we shape God. In the end, we yield to God. We adapt and endure, for we are earth seed and God is change. Earth seed, the books of the living. We shape God. It is amazing to me that Lauren could write such empowering words, given how little power she had over the large forces of fear and destruction all around her. I like to imagine that something stirred deep in her soul, something that insisted that her life mattered, something that told her that she can make an impact despite the shifting sands that her existence was built on. In my role as a hospital chaplain in Fort Collins, God often comes up in conversations with patients, as you might imagine. God, a source of comfort, a source of judgment, a healer, and at times a tormentor. I'm coming to realize that just as important as understanding beliefs about God in my work as a spiritual care practitioner is understanding beliefs about oneself. Where does agency reside? And how much control do I have? And how much control does God have over my life? I'm going to take a look at a diagram here. This diagram from research on spirituality's influence in medical decisions in palliative care depicts differing frameworks of divine agency and human agency on this scale. So in the lower left, where there is low divine agency and low human agency in a person's conception of how the world works, things are just going to happen how they happen. There's little anyone can do, human or divine, to change the course of events. Indeed, in the hospital, I often sit with folks who are in situations totally beyond their control and confronting feelings of complete lack of agency. And yet, faced with the same situation, we might respond very differently based on what we believe about our ability and God or the universe's ability to influence our situation. Faced with a critical diagnosis, a person of faith might respond with some of the statements on this slide. If they believe their actions have an outsized influence on the will of God or the universe, then they may perhaps see bad news as a punishment, that they brought this upon themselves. We can imagine if someone sees that they have a great deal of agency, and God also has a great deal of agency, then they might say something like the upper right here. If I believe, and if my faith is right, then God will intervene and heal me from this critical diagnosis. And these are things that we encounter. But what if we expand this out from kind of the personal diagnosis that might happen in a palliative care conference and just look at our society? Thinking about gun violence in America. Now, how does our conception of agency influence our attitudes and our behaviors on how we confront the crisis that we are in? And what does Earthseed have to teach us about agency and response? Quoting from verse 4 again, we shape God, and in the end, we yield to God. We adapt and endure, for we are Earthseed, and God is change. Now, this teaching to me asserts a high level of human agency. And in the way that Earthseed conceives of the divine, a high level of divine agency as well. Now, as a non-theist myself, the idea of divine agency doesn't quite fit. I might think instead of the moral arc of the universe. But regardless of how we conceive of the workings of the universe, surely a right-sized conception of ourselves in relation to the whole of everything gives at least some agency to both of these categories. So if we look at the upper right quadrant from an Earthseed perspective, we might replace that quote with something like, change will continue, and I will adapt. And if I act to shape God, I will influence that change. And this perspective recognizes that when things are in crisis, it's sometimes because we had a hand in it, and sometimes not. But the story doesn't end there. It's under construction, right? We continue to learn, to grow, and to change. Now, regarding gun violence in America, I recently heard Trevor Noah, the host of The Daily Show, remark that how Americans are uncharacteristically hopeless on this issue. He says that all the optimism and beliefs in our potential seem to dissolve when talking about taking policy action on guns. What can you do? So many, it seems, collectively throw their hands up in despair. I was really touched by his comment on that. And I'm not here with any earth-shattering answers today, but I wonder if a God of change, if a theology of emergence might be just what we need to up our sense of agency. In that spirit, I share this excerpt from a recent blog post written by Adrienne Marie Brown entitled, An Emergent Strategy Response to Mass Shootings. And I quote, "We are the ones shining light on the lies and the inconsistencies in our current reality. And we are the ones dreaming up, remembering and practicing mutual ways of being in community with each other. We are learning how to grieve without disappearing. And we are refusing to normalize this terror. We are scholars of belonging and accountability, releasing ourselves from the reductive protocols of punitive culture. We are protesting injustice wherever we find it, while forging the pathways to a justice that we co-create. We are releasing either-or thinking, and we are outgrowing every construct meant to divide and disempower us. We understand that this is an extinction point, and we are not just interested in survival. We want a just world for future generations and for the earth. Each day, we are the ones creating more possibilities. End quote. And here's the thing about change. We have a part in it. It's so easy to feel small, too small to make any significant change in the world. But when I find myself thinking that way, it's because I've forgotten who I really am. I've forgotten who I really am. My sense of self is too small. And so I breathe, like we did earlier today. And I listen for the truth, that humming truth that interdependence is the nature of all things, that ourselves are not simply individual, boundaried beings of flesh, bone, and blood. No, we are comprised of microorganisms that comprise us just as we are the communities in which we live and breathe and contribute. And from this expanded sense of self, change happens differently. Adrienne Marie Brown reminds us, emergence is the way complex systems and patterns arise out of a multiplicity of relatively simple interactions. It emphasizes critical connections, authentic relationships, listening with the body and the mind. In emergence, the whole is a mirror of the parts, fractal. The health of the cell is the health of the species and the planet. And so, in this sense, shaping God is simple. It's something you do every day, simply by showing up in relationship. Did you know you had such power? In our smallness, it's hard to imagine our actions could have much influence, but if we see ourselves as fractal, how does that change things? If each small part mirrors a larger and larger part, and each small action ripples outward to move mountains, then everything is significant. From this expanded relational self, we might seek a very different sort of God. Verse 19. All successful life is adaptable, opportunistic, tenacious, interconnected, and fecund. Understand this. Use it. Shape God. Earthseed, the books of the living. We are a part of everything, are we not? Nothing is truly outside of us, not the pandemic, not the ideological rifts permeating our politics and society, not the systemic injustice operating with violent impartiality, not the guns, not the trees, not the rivers, not the air we breathe. Nothing is separate. In this context, knowing the truth of our interconnectedness, what can assault rifles possibly protect? The background checks, the buybacks, doing everything we can to limit access to dangerous weapons, it only serves us all. It serves the movement of life. In the context of all this whole mess of teeming life, it's the change, it's the movement that becomes most relevant. What is the movement that expresses our hopes and dreams? Who and what are we moving with? And how do we listen for and respond to the needs of an ecosystem of which we are a part? Just before the sermon, you heard our rendition of Abide With Me with this extra part added in. Now, I wanted to play with the tension between two opposing theological ideas. The idea that God is a steadfast, unchanging entity, and the idea that God is change. The traditional hymn verses prompt the former idea, and my spoken word additions explore the latter. In putting this song together, I realized that the most life-giving place for me is not in taking a theological stance, but rather dancing in the place where these two ideas meet. God as change is for me not a belief to be affirmed or refuted. It is an invitation to notice how we respond, how we adapt, how we survive, and how all of us could thrive. It is a call to be right-sized, to claim enough agency in our lives to keep going, working to shape change. I know that when I stop holding so tightly to the borders that define me, when I let the world in, something miraculous occurs. Perhaps Sufi poet Hafiz describes it best. And I quote, "I am a hole in a flute that the Christ's breath moves through. Listen to this music. I am the concert from the mouth of every creature, singing with the myriad chorus." When we set the intention to shape change, to partner with movement, to be the music of the world around us, who can say what will occur? Perhaps only God. Not long ago, I found myself feeling buffeted by life's storms and rather sorry for myself as I doggedly chipped away at the evening's chores. Our 2 kids were finally in bed asleep. The house was still a mess, and I knew I had another full day tomorrow. Lately, it has been a game of how much can I take care of before I'm too tired to do another thing. And then I stepped outside just to make sure our chickens were secure, and I glanced up at the stars. Wow. Glorious constellations dotted the sky. The night felt crisp and inviting. And suddenly, I felt myself expand. Like I was remembering how much larger a body I occupied. And for a moment, all my worries and fatigue were gone, and in its place, wonder and gratitude arrived unbidden. It is not smallness I feel looking at the stars, but a sense of participation in the vast universe. And maybe Lauren Olamina had a similar feeling in the parable of the sower, looking up at the stars in the midst of a hurting world. When we remember our own expanded selves, the communities in which we participate, we become shapers of change and co-creators of reality. We become right-sized and recognize that we, too, are invited into the movement of this moment, the flowing river of change. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Amen, and blessed be. I believe you're invited to sing along. Let's make sure my guitar is not too out of tune with the piano here. Seems so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting in my family. There is sorrow in my town. There is panic all across the nation, and there is wailing the whole world around. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless, which seems so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. Everybody, I am open and I am willing to be hopeless, which seems so strange that dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Lift me up to the light of change.
This month, we share our plate with Meals on Wheels, and they've provided this Project Homecoming story. So Project Homecoming is this program by Meals on Wheels of Boulder, which provides 5 free meals, no strings attached, and regardless of age or income, and it's for anyone who has been discharged from the hospital due to surgery, having a baby, or anyone that is in rehabilitation after surgery or going through long-term treatments. Well, Kevin's mom signed him up for Meals on Wheels of Boulder's Project Homecoming because of his shoulder surgery. She continued to get meals for him for the month of January. She said, he's a real foodie. And several times he sent her pics of the food as he was so impressed with the meals. He said they were fabulous. Kevin's mom said our service was a godsend, and she felt that she was able to help him with his recovery this way, as she is in North Carolina and not able to be here with him. She said, this gives us an A+ on the food. She said she gives us an A+ on the food, the menu, and the service. She loved the fact that it's not a one-time deal, if he does need to have more surgery in the future. This Project Homecoming story was provided by their client, Kevin. You can make a donation now using the link posted in the video description, by sending a check to UUCB or scanning the QR code with your mobile phone. The ushers will now collect the offering. I invite you to give as generously as you are able. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community.
You shapers of God, You interconnected and co-creating beings, go forth and serve life. Proclaim the truth that makes us free. Nothing will be the same.